This is the story of two friends who lived in Kirkmichael who joined the Navy together and were killed in action. Peter Mitchell was born on the 18th of June 1897 and Henry Morrison, better known as Harry, was born on the 28th of March 1897. They were best friends when they were children and lived in Kirkmichael as neighbours. They both went to our school, Kirkmichael Primary School.
Life in Kirkmichael was a lot different then than it is now. Kirkmichael is a small rural village, and at that time you rarely left the area where you lived, and each village had its own community. The nearest town is 13 miles away, and it would have taken them a lot longer to travel there than it does now.
There were two shops, a post office, two churches, as people were part of the United Free Church and the Church of Scotland, and a police station. Now there is one shop and a post office, only the Church of Scotland, and a big police station in Blackgarry instead of a small one in every town.
There were 6 different schools near Kirkmichael. One in Glenshee, one in Bridge of Cally, one in Blackmorlands, one in Strolott, and one in Ballantoon. School when Harry and Peter were children would have been a lot stricter than it is now.
The jobs that existed then don't exist here now. For example, the tailor who later married Peter Mitchell's sister, Mary Jane.
He worked in a small room at the top of his house. He sat cross-legged on a table as he made clothes. Now people don't need a tailor because we buy clothes ready-made from the shops. Other jobs that no longer are in the area are blacksmiths, police and a cobbler.
Harry's dad John was a minister and their family lived in the United Freeman's. Peter's dad James works as a farmhand and his family lived in Bannerfield Cottage.
When the First World War started, many men were keen to join up to fight. Sometimes when people went to enlist, the crowds were so big they had to get police to control them.
Men like Peter and Harry wanted to enlist because they thought it would be a new adventure and they would see new sights they would otherwise not have seen. For example, the men may not have seen the sea if they hadn't joined the Navy, since they lived far inland and rarely travelled.
While men from other countries were forced to fight, the British were allowed to volunteer. The government used posters and songs to get the men to enlist. To enlist in the Navy, you had to be 151.5 centimetres tall and aged between 18 and 38. Some people were so desperate to join, they lied about their ages. Harry and Peter probably did this.
However, some men did not want to join because they believed killing was wrong, and they were called conscientious objectors.
Many men were encouraged to enlist in the army or the navy because they could fight with workmates, friends, cousins, brothers and stepbrothers. Peter and Harry were able to join the same battalion and were put on the same ship together, the HMS Defence.
Peter and Harry joined the Royal Naval Volunteer Reserve as signalmen. As signalmen, they had to carry out naval communications on the ship. This job was important because they passed on crucial commands.
Both were stationed on HMS Defence. Defence was designed to carry 779 officers and men. This ship was a Minnesota class armoured cruiser with a speed of 23 knots, and it had 25 guns and 5 torpedo tubes.
Life on the HMS Defence was good in some ways. Peter and Harry would have met new people, would be travelling to new places, and would be proud of being in the Navy.
They could send and receive letters from home, which meant they could keep in touch with their families in Kirkmichael.
However, life on the HMS Defence had lots of problems, and their time on board would have been difficult and worrying. The food was basic, beds small and uncomfortable, and lots of people were seasick. The toilets were horrible. Peter and Harry would be frightened and scared of the water around them.
Peter and Harry were both on board the HMS Defence when it entered into the Battle of Jutland. The Battle of Jutland was where the British Navy battled the German High Seas Fleet. The battle took place in the North Sea just off the coast of Denmark and took place on the 31st of May 1916.
The Battle of Jutland was the biggest naval battle of World War I. In World War I, the British Navy was a lot bigger than that of the Germans. In fact, the British navy was the biggest in the world. German submarines, or U-boats, patrolled in zones off the east coast of Britain with the intention of sinking British warships as they left their ports at Rosyth on the Firth of Forth and Scapa Flow in Orkney.
Whilst the HMS Defence was escorting the main body of the Grand Fleet, the ship was fired upon by one German battle cruiser and 4 dreadnoughts. As she attempted to engage a disabled German light cruiser, she was struck by 2 salvos from the German ships that detonated her rear magazine. There were no survivors.
The total loss of the British in the Battle of Jutland was 6,111, and the total loss of the Germans was 2,562. Even so, there is a postcard from Peter's brother to his sister, Jemima, sent almost 2 months after the battle, which says, "I had a letter from Mother, and she saw where there was a man saved off the Defence and is a prisoner in Germany. So there might be a chance yet. We will not give up hope, although there isn't much to cling on to."
Harry and Peter were only 2 of the 13 men from our local area that fought for our peace and fell in World War I.
The other 11 men who fell in World War I were James Blair, Walter Burnett, George Clark, David Donaldson, David Gordon, Alex MacDonald, James Robertson, David Robertson, Edward Robertson, Alex Sloan and Alex Chesson.
The War Memorial was built around 1920, located just outside Kirkmichael.
Originally, the War Memorial was built to be seen from all areas, as it is built on a hill overlooking Kirkmichael, but now thick, dense trees hide this memorial of remembrance.
The men and women who built and designed the War Memorial were Mr. Don Mackey, Mr. James Gordon, Mr. F. Balfour, Lady Stormont Darling, Reverend James C. Mackay, Messrs. James Small, John Stuart Downey, John Shepherd, William Grant, John Grieg, and Dr. Alex Miles and Mr. W. Richmond.
The monument, a rugged cairn of large rocks, is almost completely covered by ivy, but the presence of a wreath suggests it is still in people's thoughts. To reach it involves a steep flight of steps, and it cannot be all that easy for any veterans to attend services here.
We feel that the War Memorial is important because it never lets us forget people that died in World War I and that they didn't die for nothing. This War Memorial was unveiled in 1920 and was the most impressive and touching scene ever seen locally. We think it should be kept clean and tidy for all those reasons, and therefore we have written a letter to the Community Council to inform them about the War Memorial's condition.